A very good morning to all of you guys. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to yet another combined series session that we are having. We are now in Unit 10 in our combined class series. In terms of Unit 10, we have completed the balance of payment area. We have completed the foreign resources area or foreign assets area. Then we have done the introduction to foreign exchange rates, which included what is a foreign exchange rate, what are the different ways of quoting a country's foreign exchange rate. Then we identified the main foreign exchange rate systems or regimes that are there, out of which two of them we go into detail. The flexible or floating exchange rate system is one. The other is the fixed exchange rate system. So we have looked at these two exchange rate systems, and also we have done a comparative evaluation of these two systems. That is, we have looked at the advantages and the disadvantages of these two exchange rate systems in comparison to each other, relative to each other. So today in this session, we will be looking at one more foreign exchange rate system, that is managed floating system, which we also use. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka also has adopted in the past. And then we go into I will explain a bit about this indicative system the central bank used also. And after that, we will go into exchange rate related concepts are there, the ways in which exchange rates can change, appreciations, depreciations, devaluations, revaluations, overestimations, underestimations, those areas. And then we have to talk about the different ways in which we measure exchange rates. Okay, right. So I think you guys are clear. In terms of the study material, we are in page 29. Okay, right. So Bata, let's get going. I'll first go to the virtual whiteboard or the slides and just do a quick run through of some of the graphical illustrations we learned last week. I'm not going to explain too much, but just to visually go through, and then we will go into what we have to learn. Okay, right. So starting off here, so we looked at in a floating system or in a flexible system, how the exchange rate determination happens based on two methods we learned. Direct quotation method, we look at the dollar demand, dollar supply. We know the dollar supply is the rupee demand, dollar demand is the rupee supply. There is a cross relationship like that. So, indirect quotation method, we look at the rupee demand and rupee supply. So you can see the red color dollar supply curve converts to the rupee demand curve. Then the green color dollar demand curve converts into the rupee supply curve in the two methods. We talked about this in detail last week. And then we also have this comparison. So very clearly things were explained and we did all the diagrams. Right. Then we did the evaluation, advantages and the disadvantages of a floating system, flexible system. And then we looked at the fixed exchange rate system. After understanding the concept, we looked at the advantages and the disadvantages. Even last week, I told you guys, it's important that you go through these points and read them by yourself at least once with a bit of focus and purpose. Right. Then we also realized why in a fixed exchange rate system, there is a high possibility of the exchange rate being overvalued or undervalued. And what kind of pressure is there on the central bank to maintain, to buy and sell, maintain foreign reserves and buy and sell foreign currency to keep the exchange rate fixed at a certain level. Okay. We talked about this also. You all have drawn these diagrams, if I'm correct. Am I? Yeah, right. So manage floating exchange rate system. I will go into the study material now. Okay, I'll share the study material on the screen. You guys have the hard copy, all of you. Right. So, managed floating exchange rate system. Right. So, basically, this is where the exchange rate, general understanding of a managed floating system is the exchange rate is allowed to float, meaning to be decided by demand supply forces, but the float happens, the exchange rate will fluctuate, appreciate, depreciate within a certain range, bit of a narrow range that is determined by the central bank of the country. And the central bank will, whenever required, whenever necessary, when the exchange rate is trying to pressure itself out of that range, the upper limit and the lower limit, the central bank will practice intervention. They will basically buy and sell foreign currency and manipulate the exchange rate a bit. That is called a managed floating exchange rate system. Fundamentally, the exchange rate is allowed to be decided by demand supply, but unlike in a fully flexible system or in a free floating system, in a managed floating system, the exchange rate will float or fluctuate only within a predetermined range given by the central bank. And keeping the exchange rate within that range is how the central bank will stabilize the exchange rate. And to keep the exchange rate within that predetermined narrow range, central bank will need to practice intervention. What does that mean, Buddha? They will have to buy and sell foreign currency when required. Okay, right. So it says the managed exchange rate system is a combination of the perfectly, or we say free floating, and perfectly inelastic or the fixed exchange rate system. It's somewhere in the in between. Right. One of the one form of, now sorry, before I say that, you guys understood that first part, right? In a fixed system, there is no room for change, and the exchange rate is not decided by the demand supply. In a fixed exchange rate system, it is purely decided by the central bank. In a floating system, it is purely decided by demand and supply, and there is major fluctuations. So we are looking for middle ground here in terms of a managed floating system. The managed floating system can be applied in two ways. Two forms are there. So that's what I'm explaining now. In the next part, one form of managed floating system is where the financial authority shall decide a stable par value for the domestic currency. So they will decide the par value for the domestic currency unit or a foreign exchange rate and permit, that's what I explained, permit this rate to vary or change within a very narrow range. They will determine the value and you will allow the value to change based on demand supply within a very narrow range based on market movements. Based on market movements. When the exchange rate fluctuates beyond the margin set by the financial authority, meaning the central bank, shall practice forex market interventions to stabilize the exchange rate. So, Buddha, this is what we can say is method one, or one form of the managed floating system. We'll call it option one of having a managed floating system, right? You decide the exchange rate, okay? You decide the exchange rate, then you have a range, right? Upper limit, lower limit. Within that range, so the central bank will determine the exchange rate, and within this range, the exchange rate can fluctuate. But if the exchange rate is trying to go beyond this range, what happens is there will be central bank intervention. Central bank will buy or sell and manage the exchange rate. Get it? So this is called the managed floating exchange rate. One method of having a managed floating exchange rate. Another or alternative form of having a managed floating exchange rate system is where the central bank shall practice direct or indirect interventions into the forex market to manage the exchange rate depending on the level of foreign reserves or BOP status, BOP situation, the impact the exchange rate has on the BOP, without setting any specific target or range for the exchange rate. So here, the exchange rate will fundamentally be like the floating system, right? We decided based on, we'll say, demand supply. It will fluctuate. And when the central bank feel there's too much of a fluctuations from the high to the low, right? Central bank will try to keep it in a middle level. Yes, here they will try to bring it up. Here they will try to bring it down. So, but trying to keep it at this middle level, they will go and directly buy and sell, right? So because the central bank hasn't sort of had a range and then to keep the exchange, listen carefully, because the central bank hasn't had a range, they haven't predetermined, they haven't said this is the range. And without giving a range, without any indication, all of a sudden, because the central bank is practicing intervention and not allowing demand supply to decide, we call this kind of a managed floating system and this kind of intervention the central bank does. It's called dirty floating. It's called what floating? Dirty floating. Now, the dirty float or the float is made dirty by, right? It's made dirty by CB intervention. When the central bank interferes, you make the float dirty. A clean float is when it is decided by demand and supply. Is that clear? Right. So the two methods are, I think, clear. So we call this option 2. These are the two ways in which we can have a managed floating system. In Sri Lanka, we have had both. Sometimes the central bank directly interferes. So it's a dirty floating system then. Also, especially during the 2022-23 period, we had something called the indicative exchange rate regime or a system. We'll just quickly pop into the central bank website a bit just to get a input here, right? Okay. Right. Hopefully you guys can see the CBSL website. Give me a quick indication. Yeah, right. Okay. So now on the central bank website, but let's try to get an understanding. Now today's exchange rates they have mentioned. So based on buying rate of 297 rupees per dollar, selling rate of 306 per dollar. So as you guys know, it has rupee has appreciated over the last 3-4 months now. So then they do give us idea about the exchange rate. If you go to the tabs they have on the top of the central bank website, you will see, so they talk about the monetary policy. And then if you come to the financial system, I'm just trying to take you through with the information they provide. Then, but if you look at in the home page where they talk about, the about and what the central bank does and things like that. So even here they have given certain information that later on we will go through and try to understand, especially in money and banking, we need this information. Okay, just a quick guidance. Right. Then we can look at the exchange rate, what kind of approach they take to manage the exchange rate and things like that. So here under financial system stability, there are details again. Sorry, just I'm guiding you. The financial markets they have given. Okay, there is something about the exchange rate a bit where it says domestic foreign exchange market. So if you click on that, they are explaining what do they mainly look at when they say the domestic foreign exchange market, the main functions of foreign exchange market, right? And what does a central bank do, or why are they important, and what kind of things they do to manage the risk. This kind of information overall might be important for you guys, right? Just to get an understanding of how what we learn in theory, practically how it's done. Whatever is relevant from these things I have included in the notes and I will discuss in the future, but I'm just guiding you here a bit. Okay. Then, right. Then if I go back to the about area, right, the central bank will have certain functions, as you guys know. So based on the new Central Bank Act, they have identified 15 main functions that they engage in. Okay. And then, sorry, if you go to the just give me a minute. Right. If you go to the home page, you can see where they talk about the exchange rate itself, right? They have given a bit of an idea. So here it says exchange rate. Are you guys clear on how? Yes, where it says exchange rate here, Buddha, you click on that. Right. Then indicative rate of the US dollar LKR spot exchange rate, right? Spot exchange rate. Now you have to understand, right? This is something they introduced to stabilize the exchange rate a bit. Okay. Indicative rate of the US dollar to LKR spot exchange rate is the weighted average rate of all actual USD LKR spot transactions executed in the domestic interbank foreign exchange market between the banks foreign exchange market, including the CBSL spot interventions carried out via request for quote. That's a technical term, how the central bank will practice that intervention. Method throughout the previous or last available business day, the announcement of the middle rate, that's the term they're using, the middle rate, okay, and variation middle rate of US dollar to LKR spot exchange rate, spot meaning at that moment, on that day, okay, exchange rate, and variation margin, how it can change as per the operating instructions issued by the CBSL on the 3rd of March 2023. Then there are a few other concepts here. Indicative rate search, that is to get an idea about how the exchange rate will move, right? Indicative rate search derives based on the world currency rate exchange, US dollar, and just to get an idea where it is going, right? Then buying and selling exchange rate, it says telegraphic transfer, that is a system you guys might have learned in business studies, right? Between banks, how they do trading, currency trading, right? Then idea is given on how the exchange rates are moving, things like that. Okay. Gold prices have indirect impact on the exchange rate. So that is also generally taken into consideration. Right. So but this part, no, I haven't included this in the note because it's readily available for you. So this idea you need to have of this indicative rate, yes, and the exchange rate, spot exchange rate search that they have. Once you understand the theoretical side of these exchange rates and how they work and the systems and all that, the rest will make sense. Are we clear? Time to time, the central bank, according to the economic situation, they will have to come up with different ways to stabilize and manage the exchange rate. So this indicative rate was introduced because there was a period in 2022-23 where the central bank basically let go of the rupee. There was a free floating exchange rate and the central bank completely lost the ability to stabilize. That is where the rupee sharply depreciated and went around 380, 390 in some cases in the black markets, around 400 rupees per dollar. So how they brought it down is using this method called indicative rate. Indicative rate, where they give a middle rate based on a weighted average method of the previous day's transactions. And they say, this is the middle rate. From this middle rate, there's an upper margin, lower margin, and variation margin that is called. Within that, you can decide the exchange rate, or they give an indication, they give a guidance to commercial banks. Okay, that's one of the main things they have done to stabilize the exchange rate and reduce the fluctuations of the exchange rate. Right. Hopefully you guys are clear on the point that I'm making. Right. If you have any questions, you can ask. But again, let me reiterate, let me highlight that you need to be familiar with the central bank website, this particular area, and make sure you are clear on what is this concept of indicative rate as well. And I will test you guys obviously in your mock exams and things like that to ensure good answers, right? But you definitely need to be updated on this. Okay, right. So if someone would ask me, sir, what is indicative rate? Is it a floating system? Is it fixed system? Is it managed floating? What it is? It's a certain type of a managed floating system. A certain type of a managed floating system that is being followed. Okay, right. Okay, again, I'll ask one more time. Any questions? We are okay? Right. Since there is an absence of any questions, I will move on. Right. So with that, we come to exchange rate changes. Mainly, Pata, we are talking about three pairs of things. One, appreciations and depreciations. Then we look at revaluations and devaluations. There are conceptual differences between these, even though the impact on the exchange rate is the same. Conceptually, an appreciation and a revaluation. Depreciation and a devaluation. These are not the same. Okay, right. Then separately we have overvaluations and undervaluations. In the get-go itself, in the beginning itself, if I have something for you, so here we have, we'll say appreciations and depreciations. Then we have revaluations and devaluations. Okay. So there is a comparison for you here and here. Also, there is a comparison for you here and here. Don't know whether I made sense. You have to learn to compare appreciation with depreciation. Okay. You have to compare revaluation with devaluation. Appreciation with revaluation. Depreciation with devaluation. All of these comparisons are critical. Okay. All of these comparisons are critical. So here on this side, the effect on forex rate is the same. Appreciation, revaluation, same effect. Devaluation, so depreciation, devaluation, same effect. But the regimes are not the same. The systems are not the same. Appreciation, depreciation is in a floating system. Floating system. Revaluation, devaluation are generally in a fixed or managed floating. Get it? Fixed or managed floating system. So these kinds of things. Are you guys clear? I just wanted to understand that how these things compare. Right. As we learn, you will build your knowledge on it. So with that, Putta, let's look at appreciation of exchange rate. That's where we are starting. Okay. An appreciation of exchange rate refers to a increase in the external value of the domestic currency. Is that clear? Fundamentally, increase in the external value of the domestic currency, which typically occurs in a country adopting a floating or a flexible exchange rate system, because this is a result of market movements caused by movements in market forces, demand and supply for currency. Are we clear? Those are the highlights that you have to get out of this discussion. Now, I just want to be clear. Increase in the external value of the rupee. What is that? The amount of rupees we have to pay to buy a dollar. Okay? Amount of for 1 USD equals LKR has to decrease. Amount of rupees decreases. For 1 LKR, the amount of USD foreign currency increases. When this happens, if this happens with due to a change in demand and or supply, demand or supply for because there are two ways to say this. I'll use the common word currency. Then it is called an appreciation. It's called an appreciation. Okay? Appreciation. Is that clear? So appreciation is fundamentally an increase in the external value. Right. If you guys are okay, we can quickly get this done now. Right. Can you write the effect, please? Yeah. Write the effect. The two ways as I explained just in a simple way. You can write it quickly. Okay. Once you guys are done, please let me know. And if there's anything you disagree with, also let me know. Done? I'm waiting for you guys to respond. Okay, right. So if I read this with you guys one more time, one time very quickly, once. The external value of the domestic or internal currency unit, that is the amount of foreign currency needed to buy a domestic currency unit increases. That is, we get more dollars. Okay, we get more dollars. Got it? Then on the other hand, okay, alternatively, the amount of local currency, okay, on the other hand, alternatively, we can say the amount of local currency units required by the foreign currency will decrease. The two methods that I explained to you earlier, right? Now, when there is an appreciation, how does the demand supply forces change? Now, this I have printed this diagram. You guys need to just go through it with me, right, to understand it. Okay. So we go from S to S1, which means either supply of US dollars has to increase. So fundamental reason could be, right? A fundamental reason could be here. Just you don't have to write it, but I'll try to I will give a list. You can see a heading, broad reasons for currency appreciation. But I just want you to highlight or identify a fundamental reason. I think in Sri Lanka, two fundamental reasons could cause this. Number one, okay, exports increasing. Number two, imports decreasing. And number three, but I'll use an abbreviation. Just listen to what I'm saying so that you don't get confused. Migrant worker remittances. What is MWR? Migrant worker remittances increasing. Okay. Fourth reason can be there, but it's less impactful today in our country at the moment. That is foreign direct investment increasing. Fundamentally, if these things happen, you can see we will have an appreciation. Not a very economic reason. It is an economic reason, but not a trade related or we can't say a recurrent reason or reoccurring reason, but sometimes when we have, we'll say foreign loans, right? Foreign, or we can say foreign debt. When foreign loans or foreign debt increases, also this will happen because we get an inflow of foreign currency into the country, right? Okay, mainly I would identify the first three as the fundamental reasons for this to happen, appreciation to happen. Supply increasing for US dollars, demand decreasing, and the exchange rate will appreciate, meaning we will have to pay less rupees to buy a dollar or get more dollars for a rupee. I'll repeat one more time. Really listen. When supply of US dollars increase, when demand for US dollars decrease, our exchange rate or the value of the rupee, external value of the rupee, has appreciated. What that means is we can buy a dollar at lesser number of rupees or we get more dollars per rupee. We get more dollars per rupee. Right. Any questions? Are we okay? Then we look for the reasons. What are the reasons? Main reasons I've listed here. So I've ranked them for you earlier. So maybe you can write them in this order. I think that will be more suitable, right? Let me get this done for you. One, increased trade inflows. So this is practically in Sri Lanka. Sometimes what happens. Then so the remittances you need to add here. Or am I not seeing it? No, it's not there. So increased migrant worker remittances. Increased migrant worker remittances. So that's something you have to add. So I want you to talk about that also. And also you can say, here it says increased trade flows. Now I have covered import exports both here because it is favorable net exports. You guys know net exports is X minus M. So if this is favorable, that means exports have increased, imports have decreased. We'll talk about that more later on. Right. So what do you add? Yeah, what needs to be added to this list? Remember, I said migrant worker remittances. Migrant worker remittances. I'll just write it here. Okay, definitely add as a second or main point. Migrant worker remittances. Migrant worker TA. Is that clear? Migrant worker remittances. Inflows. Migrant worker remittances. So just write inflows. Okay, Sri Lankans working abroad. Inflows. Then you can go into the other things that are given here. So I mentioned having macroeconomic and political stability. Then what do you understand by this point here? As you guys are writing and listen to me, okay? We have to multitask. What do you understand by that point there? Speculation of impending currency appreciation, favorable speculation, speculative behavior. What does that mean? If you believe the currency is going to appreciate, right, in the near future, no point in having dollars. So what people do is they supply dollars, whatever the dollars they have, they quickly try to sell. Because if they have the dollars, now they can get 100 rupees for a dollar. But if you speculate that the rupee is going to appreciate, you will get less rupees for a dollar. You understand what I'm saying, Buddha? If you think the rupee is going to appreciate and if you have a stock of dollars with you, best thing to do is sell those dollars soon as possible. And more people, if they start selling the dollars, offloading the dollars they have, that means the dollar supply increases and the rupee will appreciate anyway. Rupee will appreciate anyway. Okay. If we have a high level of foreign currency, that means our currency becomes stronger. We can back up our currency with the reserves. Right. Any questions again? I'll ask one more time. Any questions? No, we are okay. Right. So with that, when this happens, what are the economic implications? If the currency appreciates, but in economics, if we have learned something, what is that? Or in economics or any logical subject, if you have learned something, especially economics as a decision science, um, nothing is all good or all bad. Okay. So even a currency appreciation has, yes, our currency is getting stronger, all that is there. But even a currency appreciation does have a negative side to it. That is, when the currency gets appreciated, when the rupee becomes stronger, everything we export to the rest of the world becomes expensive. So as a currency of a country gets stronger and stronger, the international competitiveness of that country tends to diminish, reduce. Because as their currency is stronger, foreigners or rest of the world, when they buy things from this country, import from this country, their cost of importing or their prices they have to pay, foreigners have to pay to buy our goods increases. So that leads to a negative or adverse impact on the exports. So it's a ironic thing. One of the main reasons that the currency gets appreciated in a floating flexible system is when more exports are done, more dollars are brought into the country, or more foreign currencies brought into the country, the domestic currency, in Sri Lanka's case, the Sri Lankan rupee, will appreciate against the foreign currencies. That's good. Who does that? Or mainly exporters can do that because they bring an inflow. But that same exporter gets negatively affected when the currency becomes stronger. Got it? On the other hand, there's another side to that, no? While exports get discouraged with the appreciation, imports get encouraged. Why? Now importing is cheaper. Earlier to import something worth, listen carefully. Earlier to import something worth $1, we had to buy a dollar. For example, in our diagram, we can see we had to buy a dollar for 1 rupee. Sorry, 100 rupees per dollar. To import something worth $1, to pay for that import, we had to buy a dollar for 100 rupees. Now we can buy a dollar for 80 rupees. So the domestic currency cost of importing, I'll repeat, domestic currency cost of importing. Earlier, the domestic currency cost of importing was 100 rupees. Now the domestic currency cost of importing is only 80 rupees. So what happens? Importers get encouraged as opposed to the exporters who get discouraged. So appreciation does have an impact like that on the trade account, current account, and the BOP with these changes. So these are the implications. So, okay, please quickly go through. Is this printed and given? Yeah, right. So we'll run through possibility to encourage import trade. Yes, because importing domestic currency cost of importing reduces. Possibility to discourage export trade, true enough. Possible unfavorable impact on the BOP. This happens this way. Trade account becomes unfavorable. CAB becomes unfavorable. And OBOP, sorry, OVBOP. Overall balance becomes unfavorable. Is that clear? Through that process. Right. Any questions again? If not, we can quickly move on and talk about the depreciation. Remember, appreciation, depreciation. Due to the current, okay, that's a question. I'll read it out loud and then answer. Due to the currency appreciation, what is the impact on interest rates? Due to the currency appreciation, what is the impact on interest rates? See, but the interest rate is more than a effect, it's a cause. Okay? I hope you got that point. When our interest rates are high, okay, that might lead to currency appreciation. If our interest rates change, domestic market interest rates change, that might lead to currency appreciations and depreciations. But when the currency appreciates and depreciates, that will not be directly or indirectly, we can't come up with a link there. Overall, when currency appreciates due to macroeconomic stability and things like that, that means we have used our interest rates, we have kept our interest rate at a moderate level, managed our inflation, right? That means favorable interest rate management, inflation management has resulted in the currency being appreciated. Or if we have very high inflation and therefore high interest rates, that could lead to a currency depreciation like we saw in 2022, 2023. Did I answer your question or do you want more clarification? You can ask Buddha. Is that clear? So another way in a floating exchange rate system, now this is one step further, but definitely something you guys should know. When you look at international, the gentleman who asked the question, are you with us? Did you understand the first part I said, Buddha? Okay, interest rates. Now, your first part of the question is, I'll quickly revisit this. Due to the currency appreciation, what is the impact on interest rates? Okay. So what I said was, interest rate is a cause more than an effect. So the question is asking, if the currency appreciates, how will that affect, will that cause an impact on the interest rates? I'm saying it's the other way around. Interest rate changes is what causes a currency appreciation, depreciation, right? Then the follow-up question you have asked is, Buddha, then why is an unfavorable impact on BOP? BOP, we don't look for that link between the interest rate and the BOP, balance of payment, right? So balance of payment, you can see the reasons why the balance of payment is unfavorable is right there. First two reasons. What is that? Imports are encouraged, outflows are more, inflows are less, exports are discouraged. So as I've explained, you can see on the screen, right? It's still visible. Trade account, current account balance, overall balance. Is that clear? Is that link clear to you? Yeah, right. Then, since the question was raised, I'll use this opportunity as a teachable moment very quickly. Remember, in international financial movements, markets, interest rates plays a big role. Now, for example, if the US central bank, that is called the Fed, that is a Federal Reserve Bank, that's the central bank. If the US central bank decides to increase, simple R for interest rates, US interest rates, it has an impact on us and most other countries. There's an impact. What is that? What is the impact when the US Federal Reserve decide to increase the interest rates in USA, how does it affect us and our exchange rate? You understand there's a link here. What is that link? Interest is the price of capital. Interest is the price of capital. Interest is the reward for capital. So what is interest? The reward or price of K for capital. Okay? Right? Capital comes in two forms. Capital as a factor of production is the real assets. Capital also has a financial element to it. We have financial capital that we need to acquire real assets. So, when USA increases their interest rates, USA, are you with me? When USA increases their interest rates, USA becomes attractive for people to go and invest their capital. So financial flows that are maybe in Asian countries, in countries like Sri Lanka, India, where investments are being done, financial investments are coming, they will get redirected towards USA. Why? US market is now attractive with high interest. So when the capital flows, the first point you have written under reasons, capital flows goes from our countries is redirected to the US market because of the high interest they get. There's an outflow of foreign currency from our countries. There's an outflow of foreign currency from our countries. That outflow may lead to a depreciation in our exchange rate and vice versa. If other countries, especially big economies like USA, European economies, even China, India, when they do it, it affects us. When other countries reduce their interest rates, and if Sri Lanka has comparatively high interest, there is an advantage where we can attract, showing a higher reward, more capital flows, then that could sometimes lead to a appreciation. Now, interest rate is tricky. Why? Domestically, when the interest rates are high, domestically it's a burden because cost of money is high. On the other hand, from an international financial point of view, high interest could be an attraction for investors to come and bring money into our country. So it's a balance. Did what I said, did it make sense to you guys? If few of you at least could be kind enough to respond. That's why, but sometimes the Indian government or the Reserve Bank of India, that is the Central Bank of India, would sometimes negotiate or plead with the US Fed or the central bank in USA not to increase their interest rates too much, because they know when that happens, investments will pull out of India and go towards the West. Right. Okay. I think we are clear. What I just explained is something your professor recently spoke about. Okay. So if someone is under the impression, especially not you guys, is, right, that I'm explaining something not relevant too much, all that, then I think that should shut those critics down. Okay. Right. Yeah, let's talk depreciation. Can you quickly write the effect with the, right? While I'll use the virtual whiteboard to highlight the, right? The key point here. Right. So this is where the external refers to a decrease. External value decreases. Rupee becomes weaker. Domestic currency. Okay. typically occurs in a country with adopting a floating or a flexible system. Even managed floating is possible, right? 600 system caused by changes in the market forces of demand supply for currency causes that. Okay, right. So the effect is given here. Okay, quickly write it and let me know once you are done. Done? Right. I think you guys are done. Any questions? No. Right. Okay. So I really don't need to explain this. You guys understand the effects. Let's look at the graphical illustration. Supply of dollars decrease and demand for dollars increase. You guys know how this connects with the rupee demand supply curve, no? Indirect method. Supply of dollars is the demand for rupees. Demand for dollars is the supply of rupees. That makes you have a clear understanding, that link, sorry, you have a clear understanding. So the main reasons, like I said earlier, we can identify. So I've given the broad reasons also in page number 31, right? We'll quickly go through them. First, I'm talking about a decrease. Main points are in Sri Lanka, practically the first point would be this, right? And then, Buddha, can you write migrant worker remittances, outflows? Sorry, not outflows. Reduction in migrant worker remittances, that's a factor. Reduction in migrant worker remittances. Reduction in migrant worker remittances. Okay? Reduction in migrant worker remittances. Can you write that? Reduction in migrant worker remittances. Then the other points are pretty straightforward. And the speculative thing you guys understand, right? Okay, speculative thing you guys understand. Decrease in capital inflows. Sometimes that could be because we have lower relative interest rates, could be a reason. Okay. Speculative behavior, impending depreciation. So if you have dollars, if you have rupees, you will try to convert the rupees into dollars because you can sell those dollars at a higher price in the future if the currency depreciates. If the currency depreciates. If now $1 is 100, if you're expecting the rupee to depreciate and $1 becomes 120, what you do is you quickly buy some dollars now so that you can sell at 20 rupees more when it depreciates. So demand for dollars increase, leading to that depreciation of the rupee. Economic implications are pretty straightforward. So let me know if you guys need anything here to understand it. Imports get discouraged, exports may get encouraged, and possible BOP favorable impact is there. But now I think right about now a question should appear, sort of come up in your mind. Think about it a bit. No, nothing. There's a question. Sir, how it affect BOP favorably? Look at the first 2 points with them. The first 2 points given under economic implications of a depreciation. What is the first point? Imports will get discouraged, so outflows will reduce. Exports will get encouraged, inflows will increase. So the trade account, current account, the BOP is favorably affected. Are we okay? Don't overthink. Take the simple idea here. Yeah. We can't say net exports will essentially improve with a depreciation. We can't say net exports will essentially decrease with a appreciation. We can't say net exports will essentially improve with a depreciation. We can't say net exports will essentially decrease with an appreciation. but the possibility is there. That is why I'm using the word possible, because what are the reactions to the price? Now, for example, for a moment, if you can pause this, just listen to what I'm saying now. When we'll talk about this after we look at devaluations, when the price of a product changes, how much quantity demanded or quantity supplied would respond depends on what? Whether the change in QD or change in QS is more than the change in price or less than the change in price depends on what? Now, law of demand tells us when the price has increased, quantity demanded will decrease. Law of supply says quantity demanded will increase. That's fine. But I'm asking how much it will respond. It depends on what? Ilma, brilliant, Puta. Your answer is correct. Nuha, great. Spot on. Anyone else? What will decide how much the responsiveness is when the what changes, price changes? Come on. Rahmi, sorry. Yes, very good. Correct. You all know this. What will decide the responsiveness of demand and supply to a price change? And depending on that responsiveness only, we can talk about, Mishka, very correct. We can talk about what? Change in expenditure, change in revenue. All that depends on this. Very good. Elasticity. To be specific, price elasticity. So when the foreign similarly, when now listen to this or get this input, it's very simple. Similarly, foreign exchange rate, yes, indicates how the prices of imports, exports are changing. So when the foreign exchange rate changes, appreciates or depreciates, how it will impact the imports, exports, the demand supply for imports, exports, how it changes depends on elasticity. So we in Sri Lanka, if import exports are elastic and if they are inelastic, the response for a change in exchange rate is different compared to another country. Is that clear with us? So that's why we are saying possible or possibility. So based on this possibility only, we can explain the impact. Right? I think I answered your question there. Okay, so especially 100%, or I use the word essentially, you can't say net exports will increase or decrease. That depends on elasticity also. Right. Then we move on. Okay. And let's talk about our next pair of concepts, revaluation and devaluation. Since we understood appreciation, you can easily understand revaluation because the effect is the exact same as appreciation. I'll repeat. The effect of a currency revaluation is the same as currency appreciation. One more time, I'm going to say this. This time, really, I want you to listen. The effects of a currency revaluation is the same as a currency appreciation. Absolutely no difference. Then why do we have two concepts? Appreciation and revaluation. The difference is with the appreciations happen because of changes in demand and supply. But revaluations are, it's a administered control thing that is done within a fixed exchange rate regime or at least manage floating. where the financial authority will increase the official nominal value of the domestic currency, will increase, right? Par value will increase the par value. Effect is the same. No difference at all. Same as appreciation. So effect is same as appreciation. No change in the effect. The change is basically the way it's done or the cost. Get it? The effect is the same. The change is the cost. Okay? It's done by the financial authority. Central bank will do it. Right. Then we talk about the so this is not a result of a free or natural movement in the demand and supply. We know that now for currency, but purposefully administered. This was the word I used earlier. We say administered. Okay, administered exchange rate adjustment carried out by the financial authority. Carried out by the financial authority. Are we clear? Right. Any questions? Okay. We are clear on the difference, conceptual difference. Then, what are the economic implications? The heading is appearing at the end. Right. Net exports, again, we are being cautious, can decrease. Net exports can decrease if an increase in real exchange rate occurs. That part you will understand once we learn real exchange rate. But every time you talk about the economic implications of a revaluation, make sure to write it this way. This is the proper way to write it. Yes, net exports can decrease, but if real exchange rate increases, the real exchange rate is connected with the price inflation. I'll explain it when we do real exchange rate. And I'll come back to this at that point. The others, I think you guys are okay. Reduction in domestic inflation due to reduction in import prices, due to, so the outcomes, implications. Because the currency, it's cheaper to import now. The reduction in domestic price of imports, the production cost of industries, which heavily depend on imported inputs, intermediate goods, tend to decrease. So that might give us an advantage. Reduced pressure on the government budget to due to the reduction in the expenditure on foreign debt servicing payments. To repay foreign debt, you have to pay in dollars or foreign currency. So earlier to buy a dollar, if we paid 100 rupees, now we have to pay less than 100, meaning the debt servicing cost of the government decreases. Debt servicing cost of the government, debt repayment cost of the government decreases. And also when you value the debt at a higher exchange rate, that is $1 is 100 rupee exchange rate. When we value our debt, it will be a higher amount. But once the revaluation is done, the value of our debt will come down. Outstanding loans, the value will come down. Okay, the ability to attract, ability to is missing. Yeah, ability to attract more foreign direct investments, because if we are practicing revaluation, that is because we have a strong currency. So we have the foreign reserves to back it up, right? And as a result, that might be a good or that might show macroeconomic stability, which basically investors look for. You don't go and invest large sums of money in projects in countries, rather where macroeconomic stability is not there, with uncertainty. You don't take that risk as investors. Okay, right. Okay, right. Any questions, please ask. If not, we are going to move on to devaluation. devaluation. That these are highly questionable areas. Okay, questioned and potentially can be questioned. The probability is very high. The economic implications, the reasons. Okay, the point form things we are learning, remember them. Conceptual differences, know them. Then you're okay. Right. A devaluation. What's the difference between a devaluation and a depreciation? I think I don't need to waste your time here anymore. The point is pretty straightforward. Am I correct? Yeah. This happens in a fixed or managed exchange rate regime or system, or even, so fixed or managed, that's good to say it that way. Then decrease in the par value, purposely done. Financial authority will do it. Central bank will do it. Okay? Of the domestic currency. Why would the central bank put down the value of its own currency? We saw with a depreciation that there's a possible encouragement of exports, discouragement of imports, and a possible favorable impact on the balance of payment. So when a country is going through a really going through a long-term period of BOP instability, BOP deficits, and BOP difficulties, maybe they can purposely devalue, they can reduce the value of their currency, i.e. devalue, and try to get out of that, right? Try to get out of that difficulty a bit. So devaluation may help in that way. Devaluation may help in that way. Is that clear? Right. Okay. Right. Then effect is very clear. I'm not going to go through. It's the same effect as, so here I would write again, same as depreciation. Here the difference is the cost. Difference is the cost. Get it? So the effect is not different. Only the cost is different. This is not a result of, again, not a result of natural movements. Right? Not a result of natural movements. And it is basically a result of it's basically a result of an administrative measure purposefully done by the central bank with certain objectives in mind. So we need to now look at the reasoning behind this. So I've given in page 33 why a central bank would purposefully want to put down the value of its currency. I think you guys have a general idea of why. Now we'll look at the reasons properly. Ready? Right. Reasons. One, creating. Right. The first reason is creating export competitiveness and encouraging exports. Okay, encouraging exports by creating high competitiveness to make our goods appear cheaper. Appreciation makes our goods appear expensive to the rest of the world. Here, our goods become make SL exports cheaper to ROW, rest of the world. That is the basic idea. Get it? Make Sri Lankan exports cheaper to the rest of the world. Protecting the foreign resources and minimizing BOP crisis or problem situation as a measure of adjustments for BOP long-term deficits. Then limiting foreign currency-based speculative activities. You keep speculating, there might be a depreciation. At once, if you depreciate, that speculation is wiped off. It completely goes away. Got it? Right. So the first and second are the more common reasons countries put down the value of their own currency. Okay? Right. then when we do this, what are the expected economic implications or the consequences? What are the economic consequences? Now, here we are being very careful with the points again. Net exports can increase, subject to decrease in real exchange rate. Real exchange rate has to decrease. In turn, favorable effect on the trade balance. Okay, cautiously given. A possible increase in the domestic inflation, increase in domestic price of imports, so cost of production may increase. All these other outcomes are unavoidable, right? Weakening the ability to attract foreign direct investments because you have weak currency, right? Is that clear? Any questions? I'll ask one more time. If there's anything you want to clarify, please ask them. No? Okay. So, in the absence of any questions, Shabra, your mic is unmuted. Right. Thank you. Right. You have joined late, if you can hear me. Right. So now it is up to you. Once the recorded version is uploaded, to ensure that you get the part covered. Okay. Right. Being in the class is important, but you have to get the job done. Okay. Right. So with that, we'll move on. Right. Now, remember I said, just because we practice a devaluation, just because our exports appear cheaper to the rest of the world because of a devaluation, just because our imports become expensive, will export income drastically increase in Sri Lanka and import expenditure sharply decrease in Sri Lanka? And would we all of a sudden see a very significant improvement in the trade deficit? And would that lead to a favorable current account balance and the overall BOP? Will these things necessarily happen? Excellent. Right. No, because I saw you trying to get into the session for a bit, it was a bit of a struggle, right? So I thought you have joined now. Brilliant. Get the job done, right? So you guys understood the question I asked. What do you think? Is a currency devaluation a foolproof, guaranteed solution for a trade deficit problem, be a current account balance problem? Yes or no? Just because we devalue the currency, is there a 100% guarantee that we are going to see a positive net export outcome? Answer: no, absolutely not. It depends on a few things. It's decided by a few things. More than anything, the elasticities of imports and exports. So there are two ways to learn this area. Both you have to know, because depending on the question, you have to argue accordingly. Both are talking about the same thing, end of the day. One is a more detailed or a more comprehensive way to analyze this. The other is a very simple rule to remember. That's it. Okay. Both are important, as I mentioned. First thing is, I'm going to look at 6 determinants. Only if these 6 determinants are there or favorably there, then you should practice devaluation. Otherwise, currency devaluation could lead from a bad problem to a worse problem. Could lead your country to a bad trade deficit situation to a worse trade deficit situation. Okay? Right. So what are these 6 conditions? First one, don't write, first listen, then I'll give you time to write. First one, we need to have elastic export demand. The demand for our exports have to be elastic. Otherwise, currency devaluation is not going to help. However much we devalue, it's not going to help. Get it? Secondly, we need to have elastic export supply. If the currency is devalued and if the rest of the world increases their demand for our goods, we should be able to quickly produce and supply. We should be able to respond quickly. So supply has to be elastic. Next. Okay. Elastic import demand. Right? Elastic import demand. See, what this means is, Buddha, now see, one side of the story is when we devalue, imports become expensive. So we believe that imports becoming expensive will discourage imports. But the thing is, just because imports become expensive, what if we can't decrease the demand? What if these are essential goods, commodities that we do not have substitutes for within Sri Lanka? If we are talking about goods that for which we do not have substitutes in Sri Lanka, whether we like it or not, we will have to import. Whether we like it or not, we will have to import. You get what I'm saying? So, think about this. Okay? So, whether we like it or not, if we have to import, whether we don't have a choice here, we don't have substitutes domestically, and our demand is, that means our demand is inelastic. So what we are doing is, earlier what we imported at a certain price, we are importing almost the same quantity, but now at a higher price. So our import expenditure doesn't decrease. Import expenditure, in fact, will increase because of our inelastic nature of our import. So if you want this to work, import should be elastic. That is, when the price increases due to the devaluation, we should be able to make a big reduction in our quantities that we import. But Sri Lanka can't do that actually. By the way, all 3 of the points now in Sri Lanka for SL, these points are unfortunately not there, unfavorable, especially the third one. Okay. And then we should be able to control domestic inflation. All of us know we do have problems. Now inflation is under control, but all of us know we do have problems here. Then import substitution industries sufficiently should be there. Now, this is what gives us import substitution industries is what gives us that flexibility that we need in imports. More import substitution industries, meaning our imports become elastic. Imports become elastic. And finally, when Sri Lanka practices a devaluation, if we are to get a competitive advantage through that, other countries who are competing with us should not practice a devaluation. When Sri Lanka devalues its currency by 20%, if India and other countries also devalue at the same time by the same or similar percentages, we are not going to get any advantage. For the rest of the world, the situation hasn't changed. But only if we are devaluing at the right time strategically, that might give us an advantage because compared to other countries, our goods will appear cheaper. Right? Why should export demand be elastic? Okay. Because just because our goods are cheap, Buddha, if we don't export things that people buy more when they are cheap, what good does it do? We have to export things that people will buy more when it becomes cheaper. That means the demand for our exports have to be elastic. Otherwise, our strategy doesn't work. Remember in Unit 2, we have learned the relationship between change in price price, okay, and total revenue, we want to earn more, right? Total revenue. So if our export demand is elastic, what will happen from the rest of the world? The demand the rest of the world makes for exports. Okay. When export prices decrease, what is the relationship? If the product is elastic, the relationship between price and total revenue is, someone who remembers this, all of you should remember this. What is the relationship? Ilma, very good. Your answer is correct, Buddha. You have answered the question and you have the answer with you also. Why am I not getting, now I'm getting some responses, right? Because the relationship is negative, right? So when price decreases, Buddha, TR will increase. When price decreases, if TR increases, what does that mean? Now we have that negative relationship. So for us to earn more from exports, when we make our exports cheaper by devaluing our currency, our exports need to have a demand, elastic demand. Did I answer the question? Yeah? Right. There we go. Okay, 6 conditions. 3 of them to do with elasticity. The other 3 are to do with our ability to manage the macroeconomy properly and have right things in place. Okay. So remember these 6 in Sri Lanka. No, not sufficiently there. Trade company that we can't control, but we have to have proper diplomatic and strategic relationships with the other countries. Okay. So I'll leave a question mark for that. Right. So these are the 6 conditions, 6 core conditions for successful devaluation and trade deficit solution. Make the trade deficit favorable. Then 2 economists by the name. Are we okay here? Yeah, we're done. Did you guys write this? I don't think I said after I explain you can write. So can you guys quickly jot this down, please? Yeah, quickly write this for them. Please let me know once you are done, Buddha. Okay, very quickly. Done? Then we can talk about a condition given by two economists by the name of Marshall and Lerner. Okay, just give me 1 minute, Putta. Right. So the second, I said there are two things you have to know about devaluation and what will decide how effective a devaluation is. Can we really get a favorable outcome in the trade account? All that will depend on. There are two ways to look at it. One is these 6 determinants, the 6 main determinants. That is one method. The other, you need to know both. The other is a Marshall-Lerner condition. Two economists by the name of Marshall and Lerner. What they have done is they have done a simple analysis and they are giving 3 criteria for us. First criteria is if our elasticity of demand for exports and elasticity of demand for imports, the combined total, if it's greater than 1, okay, go ahead and do the devaluation. It will give you favorable outcome. But second condition, if the combined elasticity of demand for exports and imports is less than 1, not only exports, not only imports, both combined elasticity of demand for both, the total is less than 1, don't go and do a devaluation. You're going to go from bad to worse. If the combined elasticity of demand for exports and imports is equal to 1, whether you devalue or not, there might not be any real impact on your trade situation, trade deficit. Is that clear? 3 simple conditions. Read once. It's printed and given in your material. Page number 34. Just read and let me know. Okay, just go ahead. If there's anything unclear, just ask. Are we okay? Right. So that's how we look at the Marshall-Lerner condition. Okay. Right. Is there a question? No, we are okay. Right. So 6 determinants, that is one approach. Marshall-Lerner condition is another approach. Connected with this, sometimes we talk about a concept called the J-curve effect. So the J-curve says with the, comes along with the Marshall-Lerner condition. I haven't given this in your study material. If you guys want to, you can quickly make a note of this in the bottom of page 34. But wait. That might be required for... No, okay. You can make a note in the bottom of page 34 if you need to. the J-curve effect says when you practice, even if you have these very favorable situations. Now, in the Marshall-Lerner condition, what we say is when the elasticity of demand for exports and when the elasticity of demand for imports, the combined total is greater than 1. Okay? The sum is elastic, greater than 1. Then go ahead and do this. Practice a devaluation. Remember, in the exam, they will test this from you this way. They will say elasticity of demand for exports is 0.6. Then they will say elasticity of demand for imports is 0. We'll say 8. Now, individually, both exports and imports are inelastic. No? Demand is inelastic individually, less than 1, 0.6, 0.80, or 0.8. Inelastic. You guys get what I'm saying? Inelastic. But what will be the case? When it comes to the combined total, yes, we see the total is, where can I write this? 0. So the ED of x plus m is 0. Why am I saying 0 point? 1.2. Yes or no? Get it? So when that is the case, 1.4, sorry, when that is the case, you realize that condition is satisfied. We can practice devaluation. Devaluation is a go ahead. Yes? But even if in this condition, if you practice devaluation, the J-curve effect says initially there is going to be a worsening. Initially, the current account is going to go from bad to worse into a further deficit. Only then, eventually, you will see an improvement will happen. It will take some time because the economy has to go through the import-export flows, trade flows have to go through what we call a natural correction. Have to go through what correction? Natural correction. Is that clear? Are you guys clear on my point? Yes or no? Yes or no? Got it? So now you have an idea about the J-curve effect also. Why am I not getting a response? Is there a delay? Is there a lag in the audio? No? No, there is no lag. Right, good. You guys can hear, but not responding for some reason. Right, just I've done a small comparison before we go to the overvaluation, undervaluation areas. Right? Okay, are we okay? You don't have to write this, but maybe if you can just have a look. If you want, you can take a screenshot. Sorry. Putta, you have asked me to explain again. Can you be a bit more specific? The J-curve or the Marshall-Lerner condition? Which? J-curve. Yeah, that's very simple. Don't overthink. The J-curve says even under favorable conditions, even if the Marshall-Lerner condition is there, those 6 conditions are there, still when you practice a devaluation, immediately in the immediate time period, you're not going to see a improvement in the current account deficit. It's going to get a bit worse. After that only, it will become better. It will come towards a more surplus side. Get it? With a bit of time. The reason I gave is the trade flows, imports, export structures need to adjust a bit. So there's a bit of time we require. We need to find import substitution goods and we need to get used to them. So those things will take a bit of time, but if we have the conditions, that is, if our export elasticities of demand and supply, import elasticities of demand are elastic and flexible, eventually the devaluation will bring us from a deficit towards a surplus. Is that clear now? Right. Okay. Then here I said if you want to take a screenshot, but I think you guys are very clear on this. If you can, quickly. Right. With that, since it's almost 11, I think we should, if we need a break, we should take it now. Do we need a break? Again, no response. Then I'm going to assume you guys don't need a break. So I'll continue. Yeah. Okay. Break. Okay. Fine. Fine. So with this, I will pause the recording and we'll go for a break, 20 minutes, and come back. Okay. Right. So welcome back after the break. So this is done. Now we are looking at overvaluations and undervaluations. Right. So this is the other side of it, depreciation, devaluation, the comparisons. If you want to, you can take a quick screenshot of this, right? If necessary. Right. Once that is done, Pata, I want you to join me in page 34, exchange rate or currency overvaluation and undervaluation. Again, a simple concept. If you don't complicate it, of course, even the simplest thing can become complicated if we let it become complicated without understanding the basics. Right. I think we are done. Right. But before the break, I had this on the screen. Now I have this on the screen. This is a bit different. This is depreciation and devaluation. Okay. If you can take a quick screenshot, that will help. Yeah. Right. I have to move on. So can I read the study material for you while you're looking at this at least? Oh, I think we can move on, right? Yeah, we'll move on. Yes, overvaluation and undervaluation. So overvaluation, overvalued exchange rate or currency is a situation where although the foreign exchange rate should be devalued, although it should be devalued, meaning the actual value should be lesser due to an increasing exchange rate pressure, generally caused by an increase in the demand for foreign currency exceeding the supply. So ED situation, excess demand situation for foreign currency is there. Most probably the domestic economy is going through some kind of a inflationary pressure. Could be something like that. So that we want to import more. So we want more dollars. We want more foreign currency. So there's a big demand for foreign currency, but there is a shortage. Supply is less. And when that kind of a situation is there, ideally what should happen is the exchange rate should get depreciated, or in a fixed system, that is where this is possible. In a floating system, try to please understand this small point here. In a floating system, there is very little possibility or no possibility for overvaluations, undervaluations to occur. Why? Based on changes in demand and supply, in a floating or flexible exchange rate system, the exchange rate will on a real-time basis get adjusted. Get it? But we have written that as an advantage of a floating system. No possible overvaluation, undervaluations are there. But in a fixed system, because the exchange rate is determined by the central bank, par value is decided by the central bank, and it is not responsive to changes in demand and supply. In a fixed exchange rate system or in a managed floating exchange rate system, there is a possibility for the exchange rate to get overvalued or undervalued. Overvaluation is where the exchange rate, because of the high demand for foreign currency and the less supply of foreign currency, the exchange rate should be devalued, brought down. But the government, the central bank, for certain reasons, will hold on to this exchange rate without letting it go down, which means it leads to a overvaluation. Our value of the rupee is more than what it is realistically should be, what it realistically should be. Realistic value is lesser, but we keep it at a higher level, leading to a overvaluation. Right? So it says, now look at this third point, it's a bit important, right? Because this happens in a fixed system, and remember the nominal exchange rate doesn't change. So we don't see any change in the market. We don't see any change in the exchange rate. So then how do we know our exchange rate has been overvalued? There's no direct explicit indication. Direct or explicit indication is not there for an exchange rate overvaluation or undervaluation. Then how do we know? Is it a feeling? No. There are two ways you will know if your country's exchange rate, if your currency is overvalued. If your currency is overvalued. Read this paragraph with me. Since a currency overvaluation may not be explicit, by observing the nominal exchange rate. Since the nominal exchange rate, NER, is held at the same level. The nominal exchange rate doesn't change. That is why we have a overvaluation. It should be devalued, but they don't do it. They keep it at that level. There are two standard methods of identifying overvaluation. What are these two methods of identifying overvaluation? One, the purchasing power parity approach. We'll learn the concept later. For now, just remember, if the purchasing power parity exchange rate, also this could be the real exchange rate, both can be taken, is relatively higher than the economy's nominal exchange rate. So what we are saying is PPP or RER, real exchange rate. If these two things, one of these are or both are greater than the nominal exchange rate. That's the first sign that in a fixed system, floating exchange rate system regime, we are having an overvaluation. First thing is that. The other indicator is the CAB approach. CAB, is current account balance. The current account balancing approach. So here what we are saying is, right? Here what we are saying is, if the current account is having persistent deficit situations, if the current account is always a deficit continuously, that's another good indication that the exchange rate of that country, the currency of that country is overvalued. That realistic value should be lesser, but we are artificially keeping it at a higher level. Okay, I can show this to you guys with a diagram also. You don't have to draw the diagram, but just try to understand it. Overvaluation. We'll say 1 rupee is 0.08 US dollars according to the market reality. According to the what reality? Market reality, based on the existing demand supply situation. But the central bank, the financial authority, keeps the nominal exchange rate without devaluing it, without bringing it down to 0.008. They keep it at 0.010. 0.010 is a greater value. So by doing this, what will they end up having? They will have a overvalued exchange rate. They will have what with the overvalued exchange rate. Is that clear? No need to draw. Just understand the concept here. Realistically, it should be 1 rupee 0.008 US dollars based on demand and supply. Market reality. But the central bank in this economy keeps it fixed at a higher level, 0.010, which means the exchange rate is now overvalued. Currency is overvalued. Clear or not? I need a yes or no so that we can move on quickly. Yeah? Right. Good for you. Next. The heading has to change. Right? Oh, no, sorry. The overvaluation in the, my mistake. In the direct quotation, this is indirect quotation. Okay, I'm showing both. I'm being very comprehensive. Indirect quotation, this is how you see overvaluation. Direct quotation, the what we are used to normally, this is how we see overvaluation. Get it? Both methods are okay. Again, I have to ask, are we clear? Yes or no? Right. But I need more of you guys to respond, please. Right? Then I can be very effective with what I do. That's why. Okay? Right. Then we are going to look at undervaluation. Simple. Right? No questions. Good. No, I mean, right? That means you're clear. No? Right. Sorry. My God. There are two more areas that are important. Okay, can we do this? Can we just finish the two sides? Overvaluation, undervaluation, and then we'll come and look at the rest. Okay, so go to page 35. You will find a heading, exchange rate or currency undervaluation. It's in full uppercase letters, all caps, right? Right. Exchange rate or currency undervaluation. So what happens here? Basically, the undervalued exchange rate is a situation where although the foreign exchange rate should be revalued, right? Actually, the value of our currency is higher due to the decreasing exchange rate pressure generally caused by an increase in supply of foreign currency exceeding the demand. Now, excess supply of forex, the exchange rate is maintained without any movement. Now, why would we do that? Now, China is a country. India is sometimes accused of this a lot. China especially. Why? Why would a country purposefully keep the value of its currency at a lower level? Because without they are trying to get a trade advantage. They are trying to get a trade advantage. Because if your currency is cheap, that means everything you export will appear cheap to the rest of the world. So what China does most of the time is China is called a currency manipulator. China is called a what? Currency manipulator. China is accused by many international organizations and especially American countries, Western countries for currency manipulating. That means China purposefully keeps the value of its yuan compared to the dollar and other major international currencies at a lower level. Even though China has massive foreign reserves, and China is having a very high value of a currency, they purposely downplay it and keep it undervalued. The reason for that is because China knows as long as the yuan or their currency is undervalued, what will happen? Their goods will become cheaper and they can sell more to the world and earn more from the world. So that's the reason for a currency undervaluation or purposely keep the value at a lower level. Then it says, in simple terms, the external value of the internal currency is decided and kept at a lower level. Since the currency, now this again, we know this right now, because the nominal exchange rate doesn't change, there is no explicit way to know this. So we have two methods, the same two methods we used earlier to know whether our currency is undervalued. First method, now the purchasing power parity or the real exchange rate is lesser than the nominal exchange rate. When this happens, that means our currency is undervalued. Undervalued. Or the CAB approach, BOP balancing approach is we continuously, China has continuous trade surpluses, or at least not recently, but they had surpluses. So that means their currency is very should be very strong, but they keep it at a weaker level. So their currency is undervalued. Okay, right. Diagram based approach. So I'm using the direct quotation method. So this is overvaluation. Where market reality is, it should be, sorry, this is undervaluation. Market reality is the exchange rate is stronger. We can buy a dollar for, we should be able to buy a dollar for 100 rupees, but we purposely keep it at 120 where the rupee is weaker. Where the rupee is weaker. The other method, if I show you, the indirect quotation method, what is this? The market reality is our 1 Sri Lankan rupee is worth 0.10, but we keep it at 0.008, thereby undervaluing our exchange rate. Here the terminology is wrong. Undervalue, right? Earlier also, is it wrong? Yeah, it's correct. Undervalued. Are we clear? Right. Any questions on the concept? Then we look at the economic implications, how to correct this and all that we can learn. But first the concept. Any questions, please? So if you guys are asked to compare overvaluations and undervaluations, we are okay, right? Yeah, great. Then, because I'm using the slides, I'll have to go back. Right. What are the economic implications if we have an overvalued currency? Which for Sri Lanka, most of the time, this is the possibility. We sometimes end up having overvalued now. In 2000 and, so this is connected now. The macroeconomic reality and what we learn here. In 2022, up to about March of 2022 or April, we'll say around March, April of 2022. But now, can you guys tell, are you guys aware? I will give you a nice, I normally talk about it, explain it as a kind of a case study, a short story, right? What happened in our 2022 economic meltdown. But just I'm asking, based on your general awareness, are you guys aware of Sri Lanka? Now, last week we did or week before, or about first session of Unit 10, we talked about foreign reserves, reserve assets. Then we talked about adequacy of reserve assets. How many months can we pay for imports with our foreign reserves? Then I told you at one point in March or April or so of 2022, the reserves we had came down to extremely unprecedented and unvaluable low levels. At one point, I don't know, the finance minister at that point, right, came to the parliament and said, looked at a piece of paper given to him by the central bank and said, at the moment, the foreign reserves we have are the liquid foreign reserves we have are around, if I'm not mistaken, I think 50 million or something. 50 million is a big amount for you and me. But for a country, 50 million is insignificant to the core. Nothing. And with that 50 million Buddha, we can't even buy 2 weeks of imports we needed. 2 weeks of imports we needed. Now, mind you, this is where our foreign reserves, in your study material, this is there. Right? If I can ask you to quickly do this with me. Just understand the point here. So this is for the year. No, that's why you don't see that drop here. Page 15. If you guys can go to page 15 of your study material, the one you have now, you will see a table. In that, right? Official reserves. Okay, reserve assets. In 2020, we had 5,644 million US dollars. That by 2022, March, April, we have brought it down to, it had eroded to, right? It didn't happen naturally, we did it. We brought it down to 1/10 of that amount, around 50 million. So at least even by 2021, in the beginning, we had 3,000, approximately about 3,000 million US dollars. But in 2022, when we finished the year, we had some stability. But in the end of first quarter, we brought it down to that small level. How did that happen? One of the main reasons for that to happen is when we didn't have, are you clear? Okay, but I'm about to explain, right? How did we run out of foreign reserves that much? What did we do with our foreign reserves? What did we do with our foreign reserves until it came down to such a low level? Any idea? Ladies, gentlemen, what did we do with our foreign reserves to let it come down to that level? Basically, one of the biggest things we did was we artificially kept the value of the rupee against the US dollar and a few other major currencies at a higher level. What the central bank did was, whenever there is this excess demand for dollars, whenever there's a shortage of dollars in the foreign exchange market, they took money from this reserve and they pumped it into the system, into the market. Is that clear? So when you keep doing that, now this is, think of, I have explained it this way before. Think of it like a, the central bank. So we have the domestic DOM Forex market. The domestic Forex market has a ED situation, excess demand, demand for foreign currency because you have to pay for imports, you have to do things. So what we did was, if we don't solve this demand we are going to end up with a problem. What is the problem? The rupee is going to sharply depreciate, not depreciate, it's going to collapse. Okay? So to settle this, to overcome this, now the central bank has, a bucket like this, right? We'll say the central bank has a, a bucket like this or a basket like this bucket, which is what we call our official foreign reserves, OFR, official foreign reserves, not a standard, just foreign reserves, right? Okay. And this bucket needs to be filled. Are we clear? So what we did was, there's an outlet here. We use this outlet. Okay, there is a tap like thing here, right? We use this outlet, and every time we wanted, what did we do? We fill another small bucket, right? And we, our central bank, fetches this bucket, right? And we go to the foreign reserve market and we sell. We keep on selling. Is that clear? Now, when we do that, what will happen? This bucket will become empty. It will reduce, no? So normally what happens is, how does this bucket get filled? We have another big tap. We're supposed to have at least, right? Another big tap that comes from the rest of the world, and this gets filled. Okay? Another big tap that comes from the rest of the world. The feed comes from ROW. Are we clear? So what do we get to this feed? We mainly get export inflows. Okay, export inflow. We get migrant worker remittances. Then we get foreign loans and then foreign grants, things like that. That money has to come in. Okay, it has to come in and the bucket gets filled. Now, problem is when our economic crisis started, right? Export earnings started to reduce. Migrant worker remittances almost became zero. And because we are finding it difficult to pay our debts, our credit ratings kept decreasing and our ability to receive foreign loans also kept reducing. So we don't have much, coming into this bucket. But what did we do? We took money much as possible from this bucket and we kept selling it so that we can keep the exchange rate at a certain level, at a higher level than it is realistically that should be. So we ended up maintaining a overvalued rate, overvalued foreign exchange rate. We just kept doing that. And we did it so much at one point when we opened this small tap here to take foreign currency, we realized nothing is coming out, only air is coming out because we have run out of what reserves, foreign reserves. Because we took foreign reserves out of the bucket at a higher rate than the rate money came into the bucket. So the imbalance there resulted in Sri Lanka becoming a country where we don't have foreign reserves. That means we don't have a stability. We don't have a safety net. So all of a sudden what happened, we realized we can't pay. And even another thing we did with the foreign reserves we had was we paid some loans also with that money because we didn't have the income. Government didn't have the income. There are reasons for those. So end result is in 2022, during March, April, we realized we can't do this anymore. We can't artificially hold our exchange rate because we don't have money to pump in. We don't have foreign currency to sell now. At that point, central bank, they just, let go of the exchange rate. They made it a free float at once. So the moment that happened, within about 2 months, the rupee depreciated like nothing. Unprecedented depreciation. The rupee collapsed completely. Are we clear? It's like, you have this rubber ball that you have pressed and forcefully kept under water. What will happen when you move your hand? It will come up with a force. That is what happened. The value of the dollar went like that and the value of the rupee sharply fell down. And we completely lost foreign exchange rate stability. Along with that, we had many problems, including imported inflation or cost push inflation. So that's the risk of overvaluation. Okay? Sri Lanka is a good example for that. Did you guys get the story? So what will happen? Exports will get discouraged and imports will get encouraged. But if you are an economics student in Sri Lanka, local A levels, know this. It's like you have a friend who does, bioscience, or a friend who does, bioscience and things like that. You can ask this guy, friend, I don't know, you all don't talk to friends like that, but friend, my bio friend, bio guy, what is this thing people talk about? This something called global warming, some carbon emissions, and what's happening? Can you explain to me what is going on? Something like that. If you ask if that person goes, I don't know. I also not heard about it. What is your impression of that guy? After doing A-level bio and learning those subjects, it's like, you can ask that guy, what is photosynthesis? How does plants make food grow? This guy says, something about the sun, no? What is your impression of that person? Good or bad? You say, this guy, good or bad? Bad, obviously. You expect some basic things for them to know. Similarly, Buddha, when one of your bio friends, maths friends, comes and asks you, why is this, what is this happening in the exchange rate, what is this whole inflation thing people talk about and all that? If you go, the exchange rate and all that, Buddha, you might be scoring sometimes marks and, you might be going for the best classes, but if you don't have these basic things in your mind, you are overvalued as an economic student then. Got it? The realistic knowledge is lesser. So my students are not that. We know things. You listen, I share things, you update yourself, and believe me, none of this is general knowledge. None of this is additional information. None of this is economic gossip. All this is directly relevant to your exam. Right. Okay, done. So exports tend to get discouraged and imports tend to get encouraged. So overall, as long as we have a overvaluation, the impact is similar to that of, having a conducting a revaluation. The impact is similar to that of conducting a revaluation. Right. What do you do to correct this? One step is we can increase the supply. That is what the Central Bank of Sri Lanka did to a dangerous level. Or we can simply go for a devaluation of currency. So why didn't they go for a devaluation? Because they know, Central Bank knows, we have inelastic exports, inelastic imports, and we are going to go from bad to worse. So they can't allow that also. So it's a tricky situation. But they should have basically what they did 1 year later, they realized it. In that period also, what they should have done is, little by little, they should have allowed managed the depreciation to happen. What depreciation? The managed depreciation to happen, because they can't take that pressure otherwise. Direct measures to decrease the demand for currency, like controlling import control. Those things they did. We still have import control on many products, many goods. Yeah. Right. Then indirect control, basically using monetary and fiscal policy, go for contractionary. When the activity levels reduce, our need for imports will reduce, right? And we can control the inflation a bit also and bring some stability there. Right. So I think we are clear. Overvaluation we talked about. Yeah. So with that, we come into the next area, which is the final area in our foreign exchange rate discussion, right? Which is to do with the concepts of foreign exchange rate, especially how we measure exchange rates so that we can read them better, so that we can do better analysis and make better international trade and international finance related decisions. Okay, right. So that is page 36, the concept of a real exchange rate. So I've given a definition. Okay, you guys can see in page 36, I've given a definition. The real exchange rate refers to the nominal exchange rate between two countries adjusted for inflation. So bilateral nominal exchange rate, remember that? Bilateral between two countries, two currencies. Bilateral nominal exchange rate, when you adjust it for inflation between the two countries, then you call it the real exchange rate. Get it? Adjusted for inflation. The real exchange rate can be calculated as a formula. They rarely ask you to do calculations, but the formula is important for us to understand how real exchange rate changes happen. So read the formula once. What does it say? Nominal exchange rate multiplied by domestic price levels, meaning domestic inflation, divided by foreign price levels or that other countries' inflation. Right. Once we do this, we convert the nominal exchange rate into that of the real exchange rate. Then, Buddha, how does the real exchange rate change? So real exchange rate changes can only happen due to one of three reasons. No, real exchange rate changes can only happen due to, I'm just looking at the order in which I have given so that I can label them accordingly. Right, yeah. Real exchange rate can change if this changes, or if this changes, or if this changes. 1, 2, 3. So how should they change for the real exchange rate to increase? How should they change for the real exchange rate to decrease? I'll give you a simple way to remember this, but logical way is also there. Okay, logically you can understand. Right. Now, basically, one of the very first things I want to remember when it comes to any real forex concept, any real forex concept. So there are, when I say real forex concepts, there are three things that will come under this. Real exchange rate, RER, then real effective exchange rate, or EER, then thirdly, purchasing power parity exchange rate. So any real exchange rate concept, this is a simple tool. Increase is generally unfavorable. Okay. A decrease is considered as favorable. Increase is unfavorable. Decrease is favorable. Can you remember that alternative relationship? In nominal, it's not the case. If we say our nominal exchange rate is appreciating or increasing, that means the rupee is becoming stronger. Here, it's the other way around. Now read those points given under change in real exchange rate. Okay, it's given as an index number that I have mentioned. Now look at this. First, look at the reduction and see what it means. So I'll just go to the previous slide a bit. I hope you made a note of what I just wrote. Did you guys read? No, you have the study, it's in the study material. Do you see what I am talking about? It says reduction in real exchange rate. But think about what is given, Buddha. Especially look at the second and the third points. The inflation rate of the own country decreases in comparison to that of the foreign country. That is favorable to us. Look at the third point. inflation rate of the foreign country increases in comparison to their own country, which means we get a competitive advantage. So a reduction, if the real exchange rate has reduced, I really want you guys to understand this clearly, okay? If the real exchange rate has reduced, overall, it means we are doing our international competitiveness, our inflation control is really good. We are doing better than the other country. That is in the comparison. If you look at the real exchange rate between the US dollar and the Sri Lankan rupee, real exchange rate between the US dollar and the Sri Lankan rupee, and if the real exchange rate has reduced, it's a good thing, because if the real exchange rate has real exchange rate, if it has reduced, that means that we have a better control of our inflation situation than that of USA. We have a competitive advantage. That is what it means. Okay, so and then you might think, okay, what about the first point? It says decrease in the nominal exchange rate. Yes, even when the nominal exchange rate decreases, international trade, if you look at it in terms of international trade, listen, the first point, if the nominal exchange rate has decreased, but if you look at it from an international trade perspective, our exports will get encouraged, imports will get discouraged, still favorable. Get it? Now look at this increase in real exchange rate. Look at the second and the third point again. Increase in real exchange rate. Look at the second point. Inflation rate of the own country increases. That's negative for us. Look at the third point. Inflation rate of the foreign country decrease. That is negative for us. Our international competitiveness will fall. So always I wanted to connect. Are you guys with me? I hope I'm not doing this too fast. Right. If so, let me know. I can slow down. But I believe you have the capacity to understand these basic things. Reduction in real exchange rate. Okay. Yes. Reduction in real exchange rate means NX. What is NX? Net exports will increase. And it means our international competitiveness, some letters I have swallowed, competitiveness will increase. Here, this means, even though this means reduction, you can see the outcomes are favorable. Here it's increase. Our net exports will decrease and our international competitiveness will reduce. Got it? So remember, real exchange rates, the reading of it is indirect. Reduction is good, increase is bad. Clear? Got it? Right. Any questions? Before we go to the next concept. I'll give you 1 minute. Ask any questions you have on this. Okay. No questions? We are done. Right, real exchange rate is done. Then average exchange rate. Let's see why we need this concept first. Right now, the bilateral exchange rates give us an insight. Bilateral exchange rates give us an insight as to what is happening between the trade situation and general international trade flows between the two countries under consideration. But what if we need to have a more, what if we have a requirement to have a more holistic, more overall idea about how the Sri Lankan rupee as a currency is performing relative to other currencies. Overall, is the rupee doing good or bad? Overall, is the rupee having a strong value or a weak value? At least against the main currencies we use in international trade. So if we have a requirement, which is a very useful piece of information when it comes to understanding our overall foreign exchange rate stability, our overall performance in international trade, our standing in the world. For these things, it's important to know how our currency is doing overall as a holistic way against at least the major currencies that we deal with in international trade. So bilateral exchange rate, while it is a very clear way to measure the exchange rate, it doesn't give us that information. It doesn't give us a holistic idea. It's always between two currencies. So we come up with something called the average exchange rate. What do we call average exchange rate? Now, to solve the first problem we have, which is to have one value that will give us an idea about how the rupee is performing against not only another currency, but a collection of other currencies. So we call this a basket of currencies. What is it called? Basket of currencies. Now I have done a small hypothetical illustration for you guys. So I have taken 5 currencies here: US dollar, sterling pound, Swiss franc, Japanese yen, and the euro. So I am looking at the nominal exchange rate, the assumed or hypothetical nominal exchange rate between one US dollar, how many rupees? 110. Example. Sterling pound 150, Swiss franc 80, Japanese yen 1 rupee, a euro 159. So once you get this data, if I add it up, and how many currencies did I take in the basket? 5 currencies. So the total is 500. I divide 500 by 5 and I get a what we call a simple average. What average? Simple average. So I can say the average external value of 1 unit of forex, foreign currency. So for any of these is 100 LKR. Now I've got an average. Then I can look at it. I can look at this. I can do the same calculation. We'll say in right. I do the same calculation at the end of so for 1 unit of forex, okay, in our basket of 5 currencies for 1 unit average in 2021, in 2022, I get the value end of the year. In 21, we'll say it was 100, and 22, it has become 120. 120. So I look at this and then realize, okay, my average exchange rate, 21, 22, the rupee has, on average, depreciated. Yes or no? Yes or no? On average, the rupee has, average depreciation is there. Are we clear? Now, while this is, it looks a good comparison, a good way to solve my problem of having a holistic or overall exchange rate idea. Yes, it's good, but there's a problem. What is the problem? Can someone see the problem? Can you guys see the problem here? What is the issue? While I solve one part of my problem, there is another major issue here in this method I have used. What is it? What is the issue I have in the method I have used? Hmm? What is the issue? Anyone? No? Okay. The main issue is, Pata, I have taken a simple average. No? What is the problem with simple average? So what? Simple average method gives equal importance to all the currencies. Now, in terms of international trade for Sri Lanka, is the US dollar and the Swiss franc equally important, or is the dollar more important? Do we do more trade with the dollar, or do we do more trade with the trade we do with the dollar and the Swiss franc? Is it the same, or is the dollar more important to us? Quickly, I want a response. In international trade, what is more important to us out of these 5 currencies? What should you give the first ranking to in terms of the trade importance, trade significance? Come on. Are you guys there? Or am I talking to just a screen? Okay, right. Most of you guys are saying we should give more importance to dollar. But in our simple average method, Putta, we didn't do that. We gave equal importance to all 5 currencies, which is fundamentally wrong. Because there are, if you take the Swiss franc, that would be the currency we use least in our international trade. But the same value we have, same weightage, the same importance. What is the proper statistical term? Weightage. The same weightage we gave for the Swiss franc, we give for the dollar also, which is wrong. So the issue is overall the simple average approach. So average exchange rates are good, but it's not technically very complete, technically very correct, because of that equal weightage given in average exchange rate concept. So we correct this by having a weighted average method. What method, Buddha? Weighted average method. What is a weighted average? Where each currency is given a weightage. A weightage in simple meaning is a certain importance. So that weightage or importance is given to each currency based on how much we use that currency when we engage in international trade and financial activities. So obviously, if you take a basket of 5 currencies or 24 currencies, those are the 2 standard methods. If you take a basket of 5 or 24 currencies in Sri Lanka, the highest weightage should be given to the US dollar. And then today we do a lot of trade with not only the dollar, we do a lot of trade with the Indian rupee, we do a lot of trade with the Chinese yuan, we use certain the euro, the sterling pound, the Japanese yen, right? And then certain Middle Eastern currencies. So likewise, right? We can figure out a weightage. So what we do is, we give a weightage and take an average of the weighted average. We take the weighted average and then we do the calculation. A method of taking weighted average and calculating the exchange rate as an index using weighted average method and calculating the exchange rate as an index for basket of 5 currencies or for a basket of 24 currencies is called the nominal. Now we bring another word, effective. What is the word? Effective. Nominal effective exchange rate. What is it called? Nominal effective exchange rate. Now look at this. Near is the index. It's an index. Not, we don't get a rupee value or a dollar value as the answer. Index number is what we get. We can compare that index number of this year with the previous year and get an idea what has happened overall. But this time, it's not an equal weightage. It's a weighted average. So that is technically correct. Okay. Near is the index value of a country's currency as measured by the weighted average of the bilateral nominal exchange rates of a basket of selected currencies. Weightages are given based on the what importance, trade importance. So I mentioned that. In other words, trade weighted based on the comparative value or importance of importance of bilateral international trade performed with each currency or country. Weighted average of nominal exchange rates of currencies used in international trade activities by a country. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka measures the nominal effective exchange rate based on two methods: the basket of 5 currencies and the basket of 24 currencies. You don't have to memorize the 24 currencies, right? That is not economics. Basket of 5 currencies, it's easy to remember the 5: dollar, US dollar, sterling pound, Japanese yen, Indian rupee, and the euro. Central bank may decide if they feel the trade patterns are changing to remove one currency and include another currency in the basket of 5. Basket of 24 is more broader. These 5 currencies are there in the 24 basket also, obviously, and more currencies are considered. Right. So this is called nominal effective exchange rate. When you take this nominal effective exchange rate, you get a more holistic idea, right? And a technically correct idea of what is happening in our international trade situation. Importance of NIA. The main advantage or importance of NIA is the ability to capture the change in the exchange rate between the Sri Lankan rupee against the average exchange rate of a basket of other major currencies used in international trade, rather than only considering the exchange rate movements in one foreign currency against the rupee. So it's more holistic, as I said. This allows for more informed and effective international trade-related decision-making and capital movements. But this should be very easy. No? We have near, nominal effective. Now we are going to talk about real effective. So what's real effective? What is basically the difference? Nominal effective is without considering or adjusting for inflation. If you take the nominal effective exchange rate, adjust it for the inflation rate differences in these countries, basket of 5 or 24, then we get what was the real effective exchange rate. So it says real effective exchange rate is the effective exchange rate adjusted after considering the inflation rate differentials among the major trading partner and competitor countries. The trading partner and competitor countries are the countries we take in those baskets of 5 and 24 currencies. In other words, this is the nominal effective exchange rate adjusted through the inflation rate of countries of which currencies were used in the basket of currencies, right? in estimating nominal effective exchange rate. Central Bank of Sri Lanka, this also they have two methods, basket of 5 and 24. So it's simply real effective exchange rate is nominal effective exchange rate adjusted for inflation, which is also an index. Okay. What is the importance? Now here, there's a bit more significance, bit more weight we add to this. The importance of REA is more. Why? Because looking at the real effective exchange rate, we can really get an idea in terms of our international competitiveness. Earlier I said looking at the real exchange rate. Looking at the real exchange rate, we can talk about net exports and international competitiveness. If you want to do it with absolute comprehensiveness, then look at real effective exchange rate. Real exchange rate can give you the idea, but real effective is better because it covers a basket of currencies on a weighted average basis. So international competitiveness, if you want to get an idea, look at the real exchange rate. So real effective exchange rate. Real effective exchange rate. Changes in domestic, so it explains changes in domestic cost of production and effective indicator of the international competitiveness. International competitiveness. Now this is important. If Sri Lanka's REA is devalued or falls, decreases, our international competitiveness shall increase. If it's revalued or rises, our international competitiveness, right? A reduction. There's a reduction. So can you see the alternative or the negative relationship, which I explained earlier? Okay. Right. Any questions, please? Very generally, I have given the point. Then I am giving it more specifically. More specifically. Okay. More specifically also, we can give this. What is the more specific way to give this? The specific way to give this is, if there is an increase or decrease, then how do we explain? Look at this. When the real effective exchange rate is subject to depreciation, devaluation, no, simply said but with a decrease. The international competitiveness, okay, international competitiveness of the country shall increase. The exchange rate decreases, depreciates, but our competitiveness will increase. That is a relatively low domestic inflation and cost of production will be there, leading to increase in, here we go, increase in what exports? Net exports. Favorable impact on the trade account, current account, and the overall balance of payment. So overall positive. Agreed? On the other hand, if there is an appreciation or an increase, then we say the international competitiveness decreases because high domestic inflation possibly and cost of production. Then decrease in net exports unfavorably impact trade account, current account, and the overall balance of payment. So the key I gave you is still very useful. What is that? If it's real exchange rate concepts, interpret indirectly. Real exchange rate concepts are interpreted indirectly. And the concepts we talk about is always international competitiveness and net exports. I'll repeat, international competitiveness and net exports. Right. Then our final exchange rate related concept is purchasing power parity. Purchasing power parity. It's a simple concept actually. We'll say there is now, but from country to country, purchasing power of the currency is not the same. No? Now, when you compare the US dollar with the Sri Lankan rupee, due to the far superior economic strength of USA, far superior international bargaining power of USA, and the far superior reserves that the US Federal Reserve or Central Bank has, their currency is much more in value than our currency. That's true. But on the other hand, money only makes sense fundamentally as a medium of exchange. And money is the ability of money to perform its job as that medium of exchange absolutely depends on the purchasing power or the real value of money. Now, if you take a similar basket of goods, okay, in Sri Lanka and in USA, how much we have to spend to buy that shows the purchasing power. Now, we'll do a small example or experiment this way. We'll take 5 items that are commonly found in Sri Lanka and USA. Some food items, whatever, common items, 5. And we'll ask this question. To buy this basket of 5 items in the specified quantities, in the given quantities, to buy this basket of 5 items, you guys realize there's no actual basket, right? Collection. Buy this collection of 5 items in the specified quantities in USA, we'll say they had to spend $1. They had to spend how much? $1. Just an example, $1. So now, to buy these 5 items in USA, they spend $1. Right. Then you bring the same basket, or you have the same basket of goods in Sri Lanka, same quantities, same items, and ask how much rupees we have to spend to buy this basket. We'll say we can buy this basket at 100 rupees or 50 rupees. We can buy at how much? 50 rupees. 50 rupees, these 5 items you can buy in Sri Lanka. That means if you look at the purchasing power parity, compare purchasing power differences, right? You will realize $1 purchasing power in Sri Lanka is 50 rupees. $1 purchasing power is 50 rupees. So we can come up with a reasonably logical exchange rate that $1 is worth 50 rupees. $1 is worth 50 rupees. Because we compare the what power? Purchasing power. Make sense? Understood? Purchasing power. Right. Now, if you look at the purchasing power exchange rate and compare that with the nominal exchange rate, at the same time, when we say purchasing power exchange rate is $1 is 50 rupees, most probably the nominal exchange rate could be $1 is about 150 rupees. Example, 150. Why is the nominal exchange rate unfavorable and the purchasing power exchange rate more favorable to us? Because in countries like ours, developing countries, goods and services are relatively cheaper compared with that of advanced economies where their cost of living is high. Their income is also high, but their cost of living is high. The purchasing power is less with the currency. Is this clear or not? So in that way, developing countries like us always have an advantage if we calculate exchange rate based on purchasing power rather than nominal exchange rates, which are purely based on demand and supply. Always dollar will have a better demand than the rupee. So the dollar will have a higher price than the rupee. Is that clear? If you take nominal method, purchasing power parity is more fair for us, more realistic. Right. So I've explained the concept with the illustration also. I'm sure if you read, it will make sense. At one point, I would talk about a conversion factor. That means once we compare the cost to buy the baskets in Sri Lanka and USA, that is what we use to come up with the what rate? Exchange rate. Got it? We will anyway talk about purchasing power parity exchange rate again in unit 11 when we do per capita income and things like that. Okay, right. Any questions? Can you just quickly go through and ask if there's anything else? What is printed in the tute is done, but there are a few more things that you should know about exchange rates. And also, I want to talk to I have to do a small area which is very important for you guys about multilateral international organizations or international financial organizations, especially focusing on the IMF, right? So that part we will do in the next session. And also I will need to share with you and then take you guys through, or we will have to work on a special practice question paper covering questions from unit 9 and 10. Unit 9 and 10. With that, we complete. And anyway, along with that, Buddha, hopefully by next week, I'm trying to make sure the material is available and then start unit 8, government economics, okay, or public finance. Right, I think you guys are clear. So with that, I will stop the recording